Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Imogen, and today I am going to be teaching you the top 3 things I wish I knew before I started writing a book. Let's jump right in. When I first started writing, I never really thought much about the characters. All I thought about was the action. I always thought that the action and the plot were like the actual things that kept the reader interested and made them want to read more and made my story interesting. This character will turn out to be the lost prince who can shift into a dragon, and in this world snails don't move slowly, and the bad guy will capture the king and queen, and then I really just thought that the characters were just the eyes that the reader saw the world through. I didn't really consider their personality much. I didn't really think that their personality or who they were mattered to the story. My main character, she was absolutely flawless. As I learnt more about novel writing, I realized that having a perfect character makes it harder for the reader to connect with them, and this is bad because the reader needs to connect with the character to be able to care about them and to make them read more of the story. And it's really hard for somebody to connect with somebody who's absolutely perfect, because in reality nobody is completely perfect. Another thing to do with characters that I learnt was that when you take a flawed, far from perfect character and change them into a much better person by putting them on this roller coaster of a journey, it makes people feel like they've been somewhere once they read it, like they've spiritually been on a journey and they've actually experienced something. I mean, I know that's how I feel whenever I finish a really good book. Anyway, so basically what I'm saying is that the action and the plot of the book aren't the most important aspects of a book. I'm not saying they're not important, because they are really, really important. They need to be interesting and exciting and all those other things. All I'm saying is there are more important things to writing a novel than just those few things. So when I first started writing a novel, I had no clue about story structure. So I knew about the inciting incident, the climax, and the resolution. I just didn't understand anything that went in between those things. When I wrote my first draft of my first ever novel, it's easy to imagine that it was very messy. When I read back over it, even I could see how messy it was. There was no midpoint, I had no clue about the 3 acts, the climax was too easy, the stakes weren't very high. Putting it simply, the entire manuscript was absolute garbage. Editable garbage. So what did I do? I went on the internet, I researched, and I researched some more, but pretty much none of the information I found was helpful, only a tiny bit. So it kept telling me there was the before snapshot, there was the inciting incident, the rising action, the climax, and the resolution. But my big question was, what goes in between? What goes where there is rising action? What is the rising action? In my research, I did find out a little bit of information, and I managed to put it together and figure out this. So you can probably see the divide between the 3 acts. Act 1 is basically the before. Act 2 is the middle, where the characters are finding out and discovering new information. And Act 3, where everything is resolved. Act 2 was the part I struggled with. Basically, the first half of Act 2, that is titled Action, can pretty much contain any information you want as long as it is relevant to your story. Clues hinting to what's to come, scenes to do with the character's arc, relationships between characters, anything really. But all this leads up to the catalyst in the middle of the novel. That's the point where the characters find out some huge piece of information that changes their goal. In one of my previous videos, I did a video on character arcs, which I would recommend watching now, so I will link that up in the iCard. Is it up there? Or up there? I don't know, one of those corners. Anyway, back to what we were doing. After the catalyst in the middle of the novel, we have this other big long space titled Downward Spiral. This is pretty much the opposite of the first half of Act 2. It's basically the downward spiral, as I just called it, that leads to the dark moment just before we break into the climax. So So this downward spiral is where I find the characters learn a lot more about the plot and the bad guys, if your story has external bad guys, and things get like really desperate and depressing. So when I first began to write, I was always like jumping from idea to idea because I just had all these different things going on in my head and I wanted to do all these different projects, but I had one problem. My brain just could not cope with all the projects and I just hated it. I just wanted to be able to stick to one project, but I just kept having these ideas that I thought were better and I would just keep going and going and going, and it would get so frustrated with myself.
But wouldn't it be better if it had fairies in it?
But wait, that would change the whole story.
Fairies and werewolves.
I thought we were writing a contemporary novel.
Well, we can write a fantasy and a contemporary one.
That makes no sense. We'd have to write 2 different novels.
So, will the world end if we do?
But fine!
I got so angry with myself that I just could not stay on one project because I really just wanted to be able to finish it, to be able to finish editing it and go into draft 3 and 4 and 5 and etc. is how many I needed, or how many I did need. But then I realized that now it doesn't really matter. Like, it's your story, and if you are losing interest in it, then you know, it might actually just be a sign that it's time to let it go and to go on to a new story. Besides, if you don't experiment with things, you could be like confined to just one thing where you might have talents in all these other different genres, and you might be able to build on your writing style by doing all these different experiments. And yeah, the ideas that seem to stick around your head for like months and months and months and that you just can't stop thinking about and they just intrigue you and make you excited to write them, those are the ones that you're probably going to continue writing and working on. Last year I decided I was going to use my school holidays to plot this idea that had been in my head for literally 6 months. I took some of the characters and some aspects of the world in my previous projects, and trust me, there were like a lot of previous projects, and then I mixed them all into a totally new project, which I really love. And I'm currently, if you guys have been reading the description in my videos, am on draft 3 of that project. Anyway, so what I'm saying is don't feel so down if you just keep jumping from project to project, because I promise you probably will eventually find one that just sticks around and that you can't help getting back into. And in the project I'm currently writing, like, there's a few times where I've lost interest in it. I've just been on writer's block, and then I decided like a month later, oh wait, I'm gonna get back into this, and I keep doing it and I get really excited over it again. So if you do look back at your old projects sometimes, you might actually find that you want to continue working on them, because that definitely does happen to me a lot. So yeah, that's it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it and got something out of it, please give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more writing content, which will be coming soon. So yeah, I will hopefully see you in my next video. Bye! How can I not say appreciate? Could you please, what on earth am I saying? Oh my god, people are thumping around so much right now. What on earth was, did I just invent a new word?